Alexi Navalny represents Russian President Vladimir Putin's greatest political fear. He is an opposition leader with real grassroots support among the Russian middle class. Since coming to power in 2000, Putin and his Kremlin supporters in Kremlin have deliberately silenced political opposition and centralized Putin's power. Although opposition figures have periodically surfaced, they have for the most part been prominent individuals who had found success in other arenas, such as oligarch turned activist Mikhail Khodorkovsky or chess champion turned activist Garry Kasparov. But what sets Navalny apart from these earlier rivals of Putin is that they were essentially one-man operations. They were dissidents rather than true political opposition. But Navalny is different. Although he is a charismatic figure, he has been building a base of political support for more than a decade, and his movement have proven remarkably resilient in the face of Kremlin's attack on him and his associates. But that makes him, in Putin's eyes, a much more substantial threat. That grassroots base comes from Navalny's year of political activism, particularly in campaigning against corruption, which makes him both popular among many middle-class Russians and a threat to the corruption-bolstered system that keeps Putin in power. But is it that easy to create a political movement in power-addicted Russia that found its last glory in global theater after the collapse of the Soviet Union only because of Putin? After the collapse of Soviet Union, which was fragmented into 15 pieces, the biggest part of the Soviet pie went to the Russians. And all the fragmented former Soviet Union countries became subservient to the United States and Europe. And Russia was no exception to this American control. After the Soviet collapse, the Russian president Boris Yeltsin started to act more like an American stooge, sitting in a newly founded Russia. And Boris transformed the Russian economy from communism to open market capitalism and pushed privatization. India was doing pretty much the same thing at the time. Boris was a controversial figure. He was highly popular in the late 1980s and early 1990s. But his reputation was damaged by the economic and political crisis during his presidency. And he left office widely unpopular with the Russian population. Russia, which just a decade ago was a world power to reckon with, now got reduced to a not so significant nuclear power, probably even weaker than the present-day Iran. Russia, under Boris Yeltsin, was so weak that under huge American pressure, it pulled back from giving India the cryogenic engine technology for rocket launch that it previously agreed upon. And this made the Russians feel weak and powerless in global theater. And the uprising in the South Caucasus by Chechnya Republic brought that Russian dissatisfaction with a powerless open society and free thinking to the edge. Now, Alexi Navalny wants to be the political option to Putin. Now, to understand Putin, you have to understand Russia. The last 100 years for that country have seen the fall of the monarchy, the collapse of democracy, the Great Depression, World War II with its tens of millions of Russians dead, Stalin's totalitarian brutalities, the collapse of communism, the breakup of Soviet Union, the Boris Yeltsin's year of chaos and corruption. Then comes Vladimir Putin, who brought in stability and, in popular perception, raised the standard of living and increased the prominence and respect for Russia in world theater. And that respect, my dear friend, is important. Putin understands Russia, but he also understands the world. He's not foolish enough to make a frontal assault on the Americans or Europeans. Instead, he knows how to use his power asymmetrically with cyber tools and disinformation, and by indulging into proxy war, be it in Syria, Libya, or Crimea. Putinic geopolitical strategies has largely been successful in antagonizing the United States and has been consistently annoying American geopolitical strategists. Russian confidence in Putin was strengthened owing to a series of steps that Putin took after assuming office. That includes the successful suppression of terrorism in Chechnya, political stability in domestic politics, and starting to pose a challenge to American hegemony in global geopolitical theater. And during his first tenure as president, the Russian economy grew for 8 straight years, and real wages more than tripled, and the employment and poverty more than halved. However, the growth was a result of 5-fold increase in the prices of oil and gas, which constitute the majority of Russian exports, and recovery from the post-communist depression and financial crisis. A rise in foreign investment and prudent economic and fiscal policies resulted in this growth. But the price the Russians were made to pay for such a growth prospect was quite high, and slowly Putin had started to do away with the democracy. But why do Russians love so much of tyranny at the hand of Putin? Actually, the Russian history shows that the entire structure of Russian political power rests on one man. That's why majority of Russians adore Putin, and they endure all the cryptic brutalities unleashed by the Putin administration just to enjoy that power. But the rise of Alexei Navalny to prominence has definitely made Putin uncomfortable, and Navalny could become the next big thing in Russia. He may even go on to improve Russian equations with the West. He may offer Russia a more vibrant and inclusive future. But the bigger question is, would the power-loving Russians agree to dance to the American tunes?